Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, January 29th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game, 216 days away. The game against Michigan in 302 days. We're headed into a weekend. That means the next time we talk, that number is going to start with a 2. Season's almost here. Can't wait. Almost there. As we head into next week, which is the start of winter workouts at Ohio State and sort of the more or less the start of the next football cycle at Ohio State, Tony Gerdeman and I were talking on Thursday evening. And I think I think the quarterback battle is going to get maybe the most attention heading into next season. But I think there's a decent argument to be made that the linebacker spots are going to be just as interesting on the other side of the ball, just because Ohio State's losing their top 4 linebackers from last year. So Tony Gerdeman, our Buckeye Scoop beat reporter, joins me today. Tony, it is as wide open a competition as I think there's been. And the linebackers have been people who have been multi-year starters. I think you're at the point where people were taking them for granted to a certain degree and not necessarily appreciating how good they are. But, Baron Browning, Tuff Borland, Pete Werner, Justin Hilliard, those are 4 guys who were like very consistent, long-term performers, very reliable for Ohio State that I don't know if people really totally appreciate how much they're losing there.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's, 4 guys with experience, 4 seniors, 4 leaders, all guys who could have been captains, and most of them have been captains. And just now you are left with, you assume the guys behind them, meaning the 3 juniors with Kayvon Pope and Dallas Gant and Taraji Mitchell, that they would just ascend. But, I mean, you've got 3 spots that are completely unclaimed. And so now not only do you have those veterans, but every year they bring in guys. And so there's nothing saying that those 3 positions are spoken for. And there's certainly nothing that says there can't be a 4th guy come in like Justin Hilliard did and move people around or say, hey, you need to play me. And there could be several of those guys. And, even once they do have a depth chart, I still think early in the season, you're going to see a bunch of guys play as they try to figure out exactly who are their best 3, best 4. And that's another thing during camp, as they figure out that might move somebody, from one spot to the other. Taraji Mitchell has been a will for 2 or 3 years now. He may move to the middle. And so there's that kind of movement going on. And there's so many questions to be answered. And the quarterback position is always fun, but this is your position where you have no returning starters, linebacker, and you've got a bunch of candidates and some guys who've been waiting patiently, and you wonder how much longer will they wait, and will their patience pay off?
And I mean, you mentioned some of the answers and how it may take a little while to sort of get those. One answer that we will get at some point in the next 5 days or so is, will Rajon Davis be an Ohio State linebacker in the fall of 2021? That is still a little bit up in the air as of the time we're recording this. I just nervously checked our Ask the Insiders board to see if there had been any news that broke in the last 5 minutes since we hit record. There has not. So we're still kind of in the wait and see mode on Rajon Davis. He's someone who, if he does sign, is a huge win for Al Washington. That's someone who everyone had sort of like written off as a USC commit. He's not someone who is probably going to be in that starting mix for 2021, but that would be, if they can get him and add him to the class. They've already got they've already done a nice group of linebackers for 2021 already. If you can add him to that group, it doesn't make a huge difference for this year necessarily, but that sets you up as a big time unit a little bit down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just keep building on that. And you get one day we'll start talking more about the 2022 class, which is just completely loaded with all kinds of linebackers and more coming. But you get Rajon Davis, if you can land him, who is the number 4 outside linebacker in the 24/7 composite, the number 48 player overall. You pair him with Reed Carrico as maybe, those 2 guys inside, and then you got Jalen Johnson as a safety linebacker hybrid also in the 2021 class. So you almost have like a guy at each position, and you keep it's sort of like you do with the 18 guys that are now moving up to be Dallas Gant, Taraji Mitchell, and Kayvon Pope. It's one guy at each position from the same class, and you do that enough, and the guys that should play start to rise, and But yeah, if you can just add those two guys or those, Rajon Davis and Reed Carrico, who are probably more ready to play this year than Jalen Johnson, who might be growing into his position, maybe kind of like Court Williams would have last year, perhaps, until he got hurt, trying to figure out exactly what he would become. But if you can add Rajon Davis, who would then help out in special teams as well, and the more talent you bring in, it makes everybody better, and guys have to start looking behind them, and they can't rest on their laurels. And I've seen people asking, is maybe were the departing group of seniors, as you mentioned, they were maybe fans were getting tired of seeing them, and some of those same fans wondering if they were resting on their laurels because they weren't pushed. And I don't think that's the case at all. But now we'll see how the new rising seniors react to that same kind of push.
And they could get a push not just internally from the younger guys in the program, but externally if they do bring in a transfer. There have been a couple names that have been sort of bandied about the last couple of weeks. Henry To'o, who was an outstanding player for Tennessee last year, and then Paulia Naoteote from USC. He's someone who is he's actually cousins with Haskell Garrett. Played high school ball with Haskell Garrett at Bishop Gorman. Either of those guys. Do you have a sense for whether either of those guys is a likely or at least plausible target for Ohio State to potentially bolster that linebacker room a little bit in the transfer portal?
Yeah, well, I think To'o is the better player and the guy with more upside. I think Naoteote is maybe the more likely guy because he has a history with Ohio State and cousins with Haskell Garrett, played his high school football with Haskell Garrett and Tate Martell at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. So there is a history there where I don't believe there is with To'o. And so that previous history kind of helps. And even with you look at past guys like Justin Fields, there was a little bit of a history. Trey Sermon, there was some history with Ohio State and Tony Alford recruiting him. So I think that may play into it. Now, with Naoteote, as I said, he's had some injury history, and do they bring him in? If you wanted to, would they bring him in? And if you've got room and you're bringing in a veteran at a position where you have veterans in terms of they are upperclassmen. I don't know at this point. Do you consider Taraja Mitchell and Dallas Gant veterans? I think they're on the cusp of that, where now Teote or To'o would certainly be considered that because they're multi-year starters at their respective schools.
Yeah, those are guys who are veterans, but not necessarily members of that like 2000 rep club that we talk about. That these are guys who are experienced, they've been around quite a while, but aren't guys who are going to sort of get a little bit of a chance to maybe sit on the side and watch the younger guys play during the fall. Because first year starting at Ohio State is you gotta earn it. So we can run through those guys because these are three names that feel like they've been at Ohio State forever. These guys were recruited and played a season under Urban Meyer, which feels like quite a while ago at this point. So Taraja Mitchell at the Will, Dallas Gant at the Mike, Kayvon Pope at the Sam. If I told you that two of those three guys are the starters this fall, which one of them do you think is not? Who replaces him?
Yeah, that's a two-parter, Tom. I think of the three, I would say maybe Kayvon Pope is the least likely to start because of the many different things that they ask from that Sam. And, on one hand, they want you to be able to rush the passer like Baron Browning. On the other hand, they want you to be able to defend somebody like Baron Browning and defend the pass like Baron Browning and Pete Werner did in 2019. And then also maybe they're looking to move towards a smaller guy and maybe go towards more of a bullet, and which was all of the rage 2019 and then was not even really mentioned from about, November of 2019 until this very moment when I spoke it here on the show. But maybe do they go to a smaller guy or a more athletic guy like a Craig Young, who came to Ohio State as a 6'4", 200-pound safety / who knows what athlete that eventually he would grow into whatever he's going to become? Or is this a place for Fort Williams, who I mentioned earlier, who came to Ohio State as a safety that Ryan Day spoke very highly of, and knowing that he was already going to be, I think he came in listed at 6'1", 223. And the first time we saw him in the spring, he was back at deep safety, which gives you an idea of the athleticism. Not that he would be at a deep safety at Ohio State, but that, we'll just throw him out there to see what he looks like. And so he's athletic enough to do that, and certainly athletic enough to be an outside nickel linebacker should Ohio State move more in that direction. And if you look at what Alabama did, and if this is what Alabama is now, you would think maybe not that you're set out to defeat Alabama, but if you kind of set out to defeat Alabama and defend them, you would think whatever you've done along the way would be good enough to beat anybody else in the Big Ten as well. Like that, if that is your goal, you should be able to then also mow through the Big Ten.
Well, and that's what Urban Meyer, when he came to Ohio State, did. He came in and he did not say, that we're building his team to beat Michigan. Like that was like that's a side benefit of what he did, which was set out to beat Alabama. And then his third year in, he beat Alabama. So yeah, you do kind of have to defend it, because if you can stop Alabama, you'll be able to stop Illinois. It will be fine. Like that. If you can stop Alabama and all their stuff, you're versatile enough that you're going to be able to adjust to whatever, unless someone is running like a flexbone triple option, like whatever they're doing is similar enough to whatever Alabama is doing that you can sort of adjust, and you can sort of change your personnel a little bit too. If it is a little bit more of a run heavy team, maybe that is more of a Kayvon Pope rather than a Craig Young or a Court Williams at the Sam, something like that. I mean, you can adjust that personnel. Does the personnel to you? I mean, I guess let's run through, before we get to that. Let's run through real quickly other names to know for the other linebacker spots. Taraja Mitchell's going to presumably be your front runner, at least for the starting job. You have heard a lot. I mean, I don't know about you. I've heard a lot of people talk about Tommy Eichenberg as someone who may be, kind of ready to take that next step. Mitchell Melton, he was a freshman this year. He's another guy they like. At Mike, Cody Simon is a true freshman, Jersey City, New Jersey. And he is someone who he looks the part. Like Mitchell Melton, Cody Simon looks the part. Mitchell Melton is one of those guys you look at the first time you see him, you're like, that is a big dude. Like that, he does not look like a linebacker. That is a big dude. And then, we mentioned Craig Young, we mentioned Court Williams. Which of those younger guys are you maybe most excited to see this spring?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder, will Court Williams be healthy enough? Because if he's healthy, then he's certainly one of my answers, because as we mentioned before on several shows, when Ryan Day says he's a future captain on signing day, like, well, okay, that's meaningful to me. Let's see what that looks like on the field. But also we got to see Craig Young as the, I guess, number 3 Sam a couple of times this year, if you consider Baron Browning the 1 and Justin Hilliard the 2. Craig Young came in once or twice ahead of Kayvon Pope, and he's a guy that athletically is intriguing, and he's no longer, he's like a legit 6'3", 6'4", and then has put on linebacker weight but can still move, and so that's a guy you'd be interested in seeing out there. A couple years ago, when Kayvon Pope had an opportunity, he made plays out. He was able to make plays out in space, had an interception or two. So I think there's a number of guys. I talking to Al Washington at one of the bowl games last year, I think, about Tommy Eichenberg, and he was all in on him, saying he just, he loves contact. He's a physical guy. He finds the football. And then the thing about the Will and the Mike in this defense is they're interchangeable. They can be, and so if it just depends on, as we said, like Taraja Mitchell is a Will, but he could be a Mike, and Tommy Eichenberg could be a Mike, could be a Will. It's just that the Sam is a little bit different. But if you're athletic enough, I could see, I could also see Kayvon Pope being inside, because I think the reason he's been outside for so long is just because there's been so many guys inside, and you've got to put him somewhere. And he's a guy that could end up being inside and making some plays. But I'd like to see what Court Williams and Craig Young can do because of their potential, probably because we've seen the other guys for 3 years, so there's less mystery there. And I know one of the great things about college football is the mystery and the guys who come out of nowhere, and that's one of my favorite things about it. So I'd probably side with some of the guys we haven't seen just yet. And Reed Carrico as well. Like I'm interested to see what this guy looks like, because in high school he's a tackling machine, and you go back to some past young linebackers at Ohio State that flashed like during a spring game or something like that, who then injuries took their toll. Nick Conner, for instance, one of these guys who was a tackling machine, and Kyle Berger, where you wish you had gotten a chance to see them before or see more of them, but they got hurt. And I don't know why I'm talking about injuries before a player ever steps on his field, but Reed Carrico is one of those guys who just tackles everything. And I'd like to see how that plays out in a Ohio State uniform.
Someone else I'm looking forward to watching tackle people is Taraja Mitchell next year.
Yeah.
Because it just, like every once in a while you see someone and it's just, he just absolutely turns someone into a grease spot. And you've seen it just a couple times. And, if he's getting regular reps on that defense, I am looking for, I know we all need to be cognizant of CTE and all of the concerns about, health and all of that, but sometimes it's fun to just watch someone get lit up. Like, let's have some real talk. Sometimes that's fun to see. And Taraja Mitchell is someone that can lay some lumber. So I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. Do you see anything in terms of the personnel here that would force them to change what they do next year? I think we're probably going to see, maybe that's more predicated on what you have at the cornerback position. Do you feel they have enough cornerbacks? I don't think you're going to see as much for linebacker next year as you did this year. But what's your sense there? Is it, does the linebacker personnel next year have an impact on what they do schematically next year on defense?
No, I think what we'll see from the linebackers is more predicated on the guys behind them. But I do think they have enough guys to play for if they want to. And what I would expect maybe is more subbing at the Sam and between just different guys, because I think Kayvon Pope, Craig Young, Court Williams, Josh Proctor, these are all different guys who do different things. And so there are different sub packages they could do there. But I don't think, I don't know that even if there are four guys who should be on the field, I'm sure we'll still see some 4-4. I don't know that we should see it in because there aren't enough defensive backs to play it. I think there'll be enough defensive backs to play this next year in 2021 that they won't be forced to go to a 4-4-3 like they were so often, especially against Alabama when they were down to skin and bones in the secondary. And I don't think that'll be the case next year. So I think you'll see more normalcy out of a linebacker unit where unless you're a 3-4, you shouldn't be seeing so much four linebackers out there. And I don't foresee Ohio State doing the 3-4 switcheroo.
No, I don't think you're going to see a lot of three down linemen from a Larry Johnson team. So yeah, no, that's that'll be, there's a lot of questions there for the Ohio State defense this year. It will be interesting to see whether perhaps improved personnel in the defensive backfield makes the defensive coaches smarter. It's funny how that works out sometimes. It is the darndest thing. In addition to football, there is also basketball going on this weekend. Tony gets to cover the Ohio State-Michigan State game. This seems like, I feel like we went into the Penn State game going, well, this should be an easy win. And then it was extremely not an easy win. So, this reminds me a little of last year's college football season where we picked all the Big Ten games. And I think as a staff, we were maybe under 500 because it was just like from week to week, you just had no idea what anyone was going to do. This Big Ten basketball season's kind of been like that, where it's like, just when it feels like, okay, Ohio State has beaten 3 straight top 15 teams on the road. Like, okay, this is really legitimately like, man, this could be a Elite 8 team. And then they barely squeak one out over a not very good Penn State team at home. So, Tony, what are you expecting to see from the Buckeyes on Sunday against Michigan State?
Well, and the thing is, it's like they almost play to the level of their competition at times. And we've seen that against Penn State. We've seen that against Purdue. And I think maybe what will hurt Michigan State here is that Michigan State always has this name brand. And so Ohio State's not going to be overlooking them. And even though Michigan State's record is not great right now, their reputation is. And so it's almost like that's what Ohio State will focus on, is the fact that this is Tom Izzo and this is Michigan State. Doesn't matter what their record is. The focus is on the program. And for whatever reason, why teams play down to opponents, it happens. I think that's irrefutable. And maybe not in every case that you can't prove it in every case, but you can prove that it happens. And so by virtue of a program being loftier than maybe what they are at that moment, I think there's less chance that you play down to where they are, because you're going to be playing up to the potential of Michigan State, you would think, at least mentally. And so that's going to be a good one. It's an important game for Ohio State to continue to establish themselves and just to continue to build. And anytime you get a home game, you should win it, even though the home court advantage is completely gone this year. And I think last week Chris Holtman said of the last 25 Big Ten games, the home team is 10-15.
Wow.
And so of a certain
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no home court advantage anymore, and so that's why. But you still have to defend it, and if anytime you can get a win against Michigan State, you got to take it, and then that continues to build, and it's a good win for the committee, and then just start building confidence, because this is also a team that is finding its lineups, and it's going to be shrinking the rotations, and so Holtman is still learning as much as he can about the team he has, and I think he'll learn more in this game too.
Yeah, it's funny for Ohio State to be on the other side of the fill in the blank always gets everyone's best shot. And that this week it's Michigan State basketball. Normally it's Ohio State football when we're having that conversation. So, Tony, enjoy that game. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all for joining us this week. It's been another fun week at BuckeyeScoop.com. It is goodness gracious. What a fascinating month this has been, between the transfer portal stuff, the recruiting stuff, and National Signing Day coming up next Wednesday. It is going to be and the start of spring workouts on Monday. There is so much going on right now. So make sure you join us at BuckeyeScoop.com. Our Ask the Insiders board has been absolutely humming all week with lots of great insight and analysis from our team of insiders. You can check that all out at BuckeyeScoop.com. Also, you make sure you check out all of our great podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. And while you're there, you can subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you Monday.